Hello, and welcome back to another video on CIPD Level 5 Made Familiar. In this video, we shall take a look at 5CO02 AC1.3, where you have been asked to explain the main principles of critical thinking, including how these might apply to your own and others' ideas to assist objective and rational debate at Technivara. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to demonstrate an understanding of the requirements of the question, demonstrate an understanding of how to address the assessment criterion using the command verb explain, and develop well-structured responses that align with the assessment criteria and grading standards. With that said, let's dive into today's lesson. First, let's take a moment to unpack what this question is really asking you to do. In this assessment criterion, you are required to explain the main principles of critical thinking and consider how these apply to both your own ideas and those of others. However, this is not just a theoretical question. It is set within the context of Technivara, so your answer must be applied to the organization's current situation. In simple terms, the question asks you to explain what critical thinking is and demonstrate how it can support objective, rational debate within the organization. This is particularly important at Technivara because the company currently relies on traditional, paper-based practices and lacks data-driven decision-making. This increases the risk that subjective opinions will influence key business decisions. Your role, therefore, is to show how critical thinking can be used to challenge assumptions, evaluate evidence, and assess both your own ideas and those of others more objectively. Ultimately, your answer should demonstrate how critical thinking can improve the quality of discussions and lead to more rational, informed, and effective decision-making at Technivara. Now that we have developed a clear understanding of the question, the next critical step in constructing a strong answer is interpreting the command verb. Successfully addressing assessment questions depends not only on subject knowledge, but on your ability to effectively address the command verb. Failure to do so can result in missed opportunities to present relevant arguments and demonstrate the required depth of understanding, ultimately limiting you from achieving higher marks. The command verb in AC 1.3 is explain. While this command verb may appear direct, many learners tend to get lost in providing shallow descriptive answers rather than explaining. When the question asks you to explain, you are expected not to simply describe the main concept. Instead, you are required to make the concept understandable, interpret its meaning, and provide evidence or justification for a particular decision or viewpoint. In essence, to explain is to enlighten the reader by giving reasons, context, and clarity, rather than merely stating facts. Instead of saying, the company relied on paper-based traditional people practices that had not been updated for several years, which limited the use of data in decision-making. An explanation would expound, giving an account of reasons and impacts. For example, let's take this illustration into account. Here, the learner doesn't just state the situation at Technivara. Instead, he gives his answer depth by providing reasons, interpreting them, and justifying the impact that these have on the organization. Now that we understand the question and the command verb, let us proceed to explore how to approach answering the assessment criteria effectively. To do this well, you need to recognize that this AC has three key components, and your answer must address all three. 1. Defining and explaining the principles of critical thinking. 2. Applying these principles to your own ideas. 3. Applying these principles to the ideas of others within the context of Technivara. Now, let's break this down. Step 1. Define and explain critical thinking principles. You should begin with a brief definition of critical thinking. Keep this concise. Your aim is to show the assessor that you understand the concept. Next, move on to the main principles of critical thinking. These may include objective and rational thinking, checking the validity of sources, being aware of unconscious bias, avoiding jumping to conclusions. Now, this is where many learners lose marks. Instead of simply listing these principles, you must explain them. For example, rather than stating, one principle is checking source validity, you should guide your explanation further by making it clear why this matters, particularly in the context of Technivara. You might phrase your statement as follows. One key principle of critical thinking is checking source validity. Relying on unverified or outdated information could lead to poor decisions, especially in an organization like Technivara, where current practices already lack strong data-driven evidence. The key here is to always think, why is this principle important, and what impact does it have on the objective and rationale debate at Technivara? Given the limited word count, it's important to be selective. Focus on explaining two principles in depth rather than trying to cover all of them. Remember, less is more. Detailed, well-explained points will score higher than multiple shallow descriptions. Also, make sure you build on the same principles throughout your answer. The principles you introduce should be the ones you continue to apply in your examples. For example, you might focus on checking source validity when discussing your own ideas and being aware of unconscious bias when evaluating the ideas of others. Step 2. Applying critical thinking to your own ideas. This second part of the question requires you to explain how these principles apply to your own ideas. This means demonstrating that when you contribute to discussions or propose solutions at Technivara, your approach is objective, evidence-based, and rational. Here, you want to present your ideas in a way that supports rational thinking debate. For example, while suggesting improvements to Technivara's people practices, you would not rely on personal opinion or assumptions. Instead, you would base your argument on data, evidence, or best practice. Therefore, your explanation should make it clear that presenting facts strengthens your argument, remaining objective reduces bias, using evidence improves the quality of decision-making. Again, the focus is on explaining why this approach leads to better, more rational discussions. Step 3. Applying critical thinking to others' ideas. The final part of the question focuses on how you evaluate the ideas of others. This is particularly important at Technivara, where decisions may currently be influenced by tradition or personal judgment rather than evidence. Here, you need to show that you can assess the credibility of the person presenting the idea. Evaluate the reliability of their data or sources. Distinguish between fact and opinion. Ensure that your response here demonstrates that before you accept or challenge the ideas of others, you first ensure that they are valid and evidence-based. For instance, if a colleague proposes maintaining traditional HR practices, you would critically assess whether their argument is supported by current data and question whether their approach aligns with modern, evidence-based practice. Therefore, your explanation should highlight that. Critically evaluating others' ideas helps prevent poor decision-making. It encourages more balanced, objective, and rational debate. It ultimately supports better organizational outcomes at Technivara. Step 4. Structuring your answer. Bringing it all together, a clear structure makes your answer easier to follow and examiner-friendly. Throughout your answer, always link back to Technivara's context, particularly its reliance on traditional practices and the need for more evidence-based decision-making. Remember, your goal is not just to show what critical thinking is, but to demonstrate how it improves the quality of discussion, decision-making, and organizational effectiveness. Always remember, passing this assessment criterion is as easy as ABC. A. Apply the command verb explain. Always remember that an explanation is not a simple description of events. You need to present clear arguments, interpret the situation, and support your points. Make sure your explanations answer the questions: why is it important, and what impact will it have? B. Balance your word count. Set a clear word count to each AC before you begin writing, and ensure you stay within those limits when writing. Always remember to prioritize depth over breadth. This will help you manage the overall assignment word count effectively. See, cite, and reference. Always support your arguments with evidence from reputable external sources. Ensure you cite and reference at least 2 credible sources. Be mindful of your in-text citations and ensure to apply the year of publication. If you want to see a full example of a top-scoring answer, check out the link in the description below. If this video helped you understand AC 1.3 more clearly, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with other CIPD learners who may be struggling. Thanks for learning with me, and see you in the next one.